Okay, hi everyone. Um, can you all hear me? I hope you can, because I'm presuming you can. I don't get any feedback necessarily that you can hear me, but Irina, who's here with me, she'll let me know if people can't hear. Um, my name is Martin Bryant, and I am a professor of landscape architecture at UTS. I run the landscape architecture program, both an undergraduate one and a postgraduate course. And I presume you're all interested in the postgraduate course. I'll just talk to you a little bit about that in the next 15 minutes or so, and then you can ask questions and get clarified where we're up to. But just anecdotally, I'll note that in the last week, I have spoken to a number of colleagues in business, in practice, and they're all asking me, where are all the landscape architecture graduates? They're all screaming out for more. And I also went to Asia last few days as well, and talked to people there, and they're very frustrated that they have to import landscape architects from America at very expensive rates in order to do landscape architecture projects in Vietnam and Indonesia. So there's a world out there waiting for you, and it's not just about making a career, it's also about doing something which I hope you'll find contributes to the planet, the future, the environment, and makes people's lives healthier and happier, and hopefully that'll make you satisfied in your future. So firstly, I'll acknowledge country, that I am talking to you from the Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, and our campus sits on that, and I acknowledge and pay respect to elders past, present, and future. This recording will now be, the session will now be recorded. If you have an issue with with being recorded, so your comments or whatever might be put in here, then you can contact UTS at the email address you see there at the bottom. If you just take a screenshot of that, you can talk to them if you're concerned about anything that's happened here. But otherwise, we'll start the recording now. I presume you'll do that, Irina. And to ask questions, what we'd really like to do is just have you put the question in Q&A, and then I will read it out at the end and say, and hopefully answer it. And that way we can, get this to be fairly coherent. And I can also see the range of questions so that we don't dwell too long on any one question or the other, depending on how many questions there are. So let me start. So landscape architecture is the Masters of Landscape Architecture is a 2-year degree that we do at UTS. We sit in the School of Architecture, but we have a more or less self-contained course, though I do note that there are some courses that we share with other disciplines simply because we want you to learn how to work with other disciplines. And sometimes they're architects, and sometimes they're designers, and sometimes they're scientists, and so on. So we'll get different projects to work in different ways. This is a picture of some students who went on a tour to Europe and looked at a famous piece of waterway. This was a very degraded waterway once, and it's been worked over by some landscape architects to turn it into a really healthy waterway. It's in Switzerland. You can see the vineyards in the background there, but the waterway was very poorly treated by a lot of factories, and the landscape architects' work was about purifying the water, and that meant doing things in the water in a kind of an ecological way to make it balance. And students all went there and listened to the landscape architects who designed this thing, and a number of other projects while they were there. UTS Landscape Architecture is only about 8 years old, but I think we're kind of distinctive, and our distinctiveness was verified at the Barcelona Biennale, which was held last year, when all schools around the world submit what they think their school is up to and why they think they're good or important or significant or whatever. And the judges recognized us, UTS Landscape Architecture, as being in the top 3. So we finished in the top 3 schools in the world. So we the other two schools, one was in New York and the other one was in Italy, but that were in the top three. But it's quite distinctive. You'll notice that, you know, there's lots of other schools around Australia and America which didn't get into the top three. So we feel we've got a good system happening here, and that was verified in this Biennale last year. Why our system is good, I would say, is because of three things. One is we have really good and talented and diverse staff. So there's 6 of us who teach into the program. All of us are incredibly different, but all of us have a common value and a goal in that we want to make landscape architecture important, significant, and make significant contributions to the earth. And some of the work is different. And here's a couple of things that you see that are different. So the picture on the left-hand side is a picture of a map of Antarctica, but it's a different type of map. It was one drawn from krill's point of view. Krills are the little tiny prawns that live there. And basically the really important to the temperature of the oceans around the world, which affects climate change around the world, and the amount of carbon in the ocean affects climate change. And we were trying to start to say, well, okay, we need to look at the world from beyond human beings' perspective. We need to look at it from other creatures, and this is a way of just starting to look at, well, how would a krill have a map, and what are the flows, and what are the ways and the borders and edges that they would have in the world. And that's a student's interpretation of that. On the right-hand side, you can see a picture of a student working in a it's kind of like a bathtub of water, where he's working out with technology the impact of erosion on riverbanks, and you can see all the little pictures behind him. So he's got quite a sophisticated piece of technology, and that's all in-house. So we do everything from, like I say, from the cartography, the new cartographies on the left, to high-level technologies which are really changing the face of landscape architecture. Landscape architecture, when I grew up and when I did it 30 or 40 years ago, it was all about drawing with pencils and pens and that kind of thing. And now there's a whole new world associated with it. And the technology gives us a greater level of detail, greater amounts of data, so that we can make more responsible responses to landscape. At the core of all our landscape architecture course is a series of landscape studios. So you will do 4 of them if you go into the masters. You may do another 2 if you do the grad certificate and grad diploma. These are the studios. So this was what you see here in the background is a studio that was done for the Antarctica. So they got examples of animals, and they started to understand the science of the animals, and they also started to express the politics of it. And so they developed a series of schemes based on this core knowledge of what was happening there. But we do all sorts of diverse things. So there's a studio that we took out to Broken Hill. There you see the students sitting on one of the hills looking west at Broken Hill at sunset. And they were designing with a local Aboriginal community a cultural centre. And what was interesting about it was that they were digging into the ground to expose what was under the ground, because Broken Hill's famous for what's in the ground, because they do a whole lot of mining, but they were trying to show that what's actually in the ground could actually be really healthy and help the health of Broken Hill. Another type of studio that we did last year and this year actually was what we called rewilding Moore Park. So we worked on the premise that some places in Sydney, and this is particularly in Moore Park, which is a golf course, could be redesigned so that it looks after animals, encourages more animals into the city. So there's a wildness that would happen in there. And so the whole studio is exploring the idea of what actually makes something wild. And so there's partly philosophical kind of a problem there, but it's also a problem which we try and think of as architectural. So how do we do something in it? So and we need to know the tectonics of, you know, how all the ecologies work and so on. And here's a series of drawings which some of the students were doing, showing that the architectural plan or the landscape architectural plan for the future is not necessarily, just this one pretty picture. And yes, we do have to have the pretty pictures, which are really good and tell a lot of stories, but it's also of how we get there. And these students up the top were identifying the community activities that develop that. So we're quite interested in this whole way, redefining what landscape architecture can do to certainly to help the climate issues around the world. Another studio we did was up in Byron Bay. We were looking at the coastal ecologies. We're looking at these lakes, lagoons that you see there, and the health of those lakes. And student developed another way of drawing and mapping those lakes to start to understand how the local Aboriginals interpreted that area, and therefore how that could be modified, not to make more housing around it, but to keep the lagoon icoles healthy. And we did a studio in Hong Kong, which we also brought back to Sydney. We were looking at this problem of density. How do you make places incredibly dense? Because we need density, because we've got to get people to live in places. But how do we do it with a landscape that's changing and keep the landscape healthy too? So it's not only a changing landscape, it's a healthy landscape. And one of those people in there, the lady in the middle, her name's Alyssa, she did a remarkable project where she started to create a story. And you can see the storyboard that she created there on the bottom right-hand side, which led to a big map. And she was putting this into Darling Harbour. That's a map of Darling Harbour, but she was using the knowledge she got out of going to Hong Kong to develop that storyline, as if to say this narrative is a way in which we should be designing into the future. So you can see we're starting to explore different ideas about what design is. And it's not just one big picture, one big master scheme, which some famous architect or landscape architect does. It's actually working through different techniques, like different types of drawing and different types of stories and narratives that are important there. In the last year, we encouraged students to do a thesis. So it is a design thesis. In other words, a thesis is normally in academic terms a long document with 50,000 words. We don't do that. We want 5,000 words maximum, but we want a design project in there, and this allows students to be really deep and also to spread out wide in what they're particularly interested in. One girl this year, one student, she's doing a grasslands area, or she's just looking at grasslands in a city and how important the grasslands are and how the grass should be grown longer and how people treat grasslands and how they mow them. And so she developed a whole community program around grasslands and looking after grasslands. But that's one of a number of projects that get done in the thesis year. And what we really want is people to develop their niche by going deeply into an area in their design studio. We also have a series of practice-based classes. In other words, we explore the idea of how you might practice in the future. So professional practice teaches you about the traditional ways in which we practice professionally. And then we start to look at alternatives for practice, and practice that can be part of research, and practice that also advocates for certain positions. So if you want to advocate for the environment or advocate for grasslands, say, that's the sort of thing we want to develop in that practice subject there. So you can see how these subjects actually tie into the studio as a way of seeing how you would turn something which you design in your studio into this. So just briefly, here is the structure of the course. You can see that I've labeled this MLA1 and MLA2. So they're the 2 years that you would spend doing this. So the 2-year MLA is a accredited course. In other words, the Institute of Landscape Architects recognizes this course, and you would be able to use this course to become a registered landscape architect after you've finished, or shortly after you've finished. I think they require a year or two of experience in practice before that happens. But this is a course which you must do, or one of the courses that you must do to become a registered landscape architect. And you can see if you start from the bottom and go up, MLA1 is Master of Landscape Research. So there's a research studio, then there's an interdisciplinary design studio, and then there's two thesis projects. Same project that you do in the MLA2, in both the terms. So one gets to a certain point, you build it up conceptually, and then the second term you develop it in detail. So like I say, you're going into a whole lot of depth. At the same time, you're doing some other subjects in MLA 1. So there's, in the first term, we do project management, the traditional project management of professions, and then you look into research cultures, and then you look into a profession, and then advocacy in the MLA 2. And alongside that is a series of electives, and I and other staff members academics will help you choose what electives you should be doing, simply because we want to make sure that you're really developing your expertise. We don't want you to just do an elective because there's an elective there and just get away, and just do six credit points. We want you to actually use this so that it's useful for you. So we will help you channel what you do in your electives, but there's no compunction on that. It's just us really interested in you and your contribution that you make in the future. The other two courses, and this is, so the Master of Landscape Architecture, the 2-year course, is for people who've done 3 years of landscape architecture somewhere else in the world. If you haven't come from a course which did landscape architecture, then we'd get you to do another year, which is 2 lots of 24 credit points. You do 24 credit points in a term, so in autumn and spring, and you can start in spring or you can start in autumn, so it doesn't really matter. And you do a series of studios there, and then you do a series of subjects on that's shown on the right-hand side. So, and again, this is a pathway which we would help you choose so that you can work out exactly what you need. So, for example, I get lots of architects who decided, I've done 3 years of architecture, but I really want to be a landscape architect. So we would put them through this, and they do this 3-year degree, which includes the certificate and diploma, and then the MLA. And the things you wouldn't have done botany and ecology in your architecture degree. So those are the kinds of subjects we get you to do. So make sure you've got a full complement of subjects that understand. So architects, if you did architecture, then you would probably know how to draw. So communications 1 and 2 may be unnecessary to you, and you probably know how to do construction. On the other hand, we get lots of people from science, and especially from natural sciences, who are become interested in landscape architecture. They don't need to do ecology or botany, but they do need to learn how to draw. So they would be doing communications 1 and 2, and maybe a construction and an infrastructures course. So you can see that the whole thing's designed to find out where you're at the moment you walk into the place, and also 3 years later to make sure you have a particular niche in the area. And there are also some, so it kind of sounds confusing because you can do the MLA, the Master of Landscape Architecture, in 3 years, which is what I'm showing here. And that's if you don't have any landscape architecture studies already done. If you've already done a 3-year course, then you can just do the 2-year. If you've already done a 4-year course, you can just do the 1 year, which is the MLA 2. So technically, I say, you can do a 1 year, a 2 year, or a 3-year masters, but it all really depends on what experience you have. So that's all that I was going to say, but I'm quite happy now to field any questions. And I notice there's a question in there, so I'm going to open that up. So Asmar has asked, I have currently graduated with a master's degree in structural engineering. Can I apply for this degree? The answer to that is yes, absolutely yes. It's exactly what we want. We want people who have got a degree but feel like they're not fully satisfied with the type of work they would do there, and can see that there's lots of benefit and lots of creativity and lots of enjoyment that comes from doing landscape architecture. So we would take Asma in to do the 3-year degree, the graduate certificate and diploma, and then the MLA. I would be focusing, if he's done structural engineering, he obviously doesn't need to do, or she, I'm not sure if Asma's he or she, let's go with they, would do some ecology, botany, maybe one drawing course, depending on the drawing skills. Again, I just talked with Asma about just exactly what level of competence they have in terms of being able to draw, and then do the design studios and then build it up from there. There's a second question here. Hope that answers your question, Asma. I hope all of you can just apply that idea that wherever you've come from in the world, if you come from law, IT, engineering, science, whatever, we take it as, okay, there's holes in your education. If you want to be a landscape architect, we're going to fill those holes in the first year. The first year is a bridging course, the graduate certificate and diploma. And then the second and third year, you're joining the rest of the cohort who have come through from the undergraduate degree to do a master's. I want to be a landscaper. The second question says, if I want to be a landscape architect without landscape background, only design background, I can only do 3 years instead of 2. Yes, that's right, because what we want to make sure of is that you have the grounding in all the background knowledge. So if you've got a design degree, then you obviously can draw a fair bit, and so you're fairly competent with that, and you're fairly competent drawing, but we probably want to make sure that you understand ecology and construction, perhaps, if you haven't done that, or infrastructures, some of the things which you need to, we're going to be important. What we're really after is making sure you're not just doing this course and not feeling satisfied at the end of it. We want to make sure that you're really skilled and you're really going to make a contribution when you walk out of this place. And I hope that's clear. But again, any one of you can come and send me an email and talk to me specifically about their particular situation. I'm more than happy to do that at another time. Is all the course, the next question says, is all the course study online or face-to-face? Did you have the open day to chat directly? The course is all face-to-face. At the moment, we still have a couple of people who started the course and are in China, and they can't get out of China because China's closed its borders. So we're still doing a small amount of them online. And they're important to us, those students in China. And that's like I say, the potential for work in Asia is phenomenal. But we do it face-to-face. And the reason we do it face-to-face is because design is you learn design so much better when it's face-to-face. You see, I can draw things on your drawings and you can draw over the top of my drawing so that we can start to actually develop something. I know we can technically do that on Miro boards and other platforms online, but they're never anywhere near as good as doing it face-to-face. And we want you to build models, and we want to look at models together of landforms and landscapes and start saying, oh, what's happening here? How's the water flowing down there? What's the topography doing? When I ask those sort of questions, we can do that with a model when we're looking at each other, and it's really hard to do it online. Well, it's possible online, but it's never really as satisfying. Eduardo Castellato, he's a guest, and he's asked, can I do MLA 1 and 2 part-time, as well as grad cert and grad diploma? Yes, all of this you can do part-time. So you just need to, so I appreciate that lots of people who come in here, and we have lots of people who do come in here, and they have other commitments. They've got children, or they've got a job, and they've got a mortgage to pay, and mortgage rates are going up, and all that kind of stuff. So it is quite complicated what happens in the world, but and so anyone can just choose those subjects and just go slowly through it. So it's obviously going to take longer than 3 years to do that, but that may well suit people. And I don't necessarily think that there's any it's really important to get it through and done as quickly as possible. What's really important is you enjoy doing it, and you get the most out of it, and you don't feel like you're just being put under stress year in, year out. So I encourage people to think about that part-time option, just to maybe spread it out a little bit to suit what they're doing and suit whatever their family situation or work situation they're in, and we don't want to mess people's lives. But we do want to make your lives a whole lot better by making you enjoy what you're doing here. That's all the questions that I can see at the moment. Is there anything else? And if you look in the chat, Irina has indicated that there's a position where you can make a booking with me, and we can talk about whatever your particular situation is and what you might do. And I'd be pretty, I mean, I can understand pretty easily when you say, hey, here's my experience, I've done this, 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 and this. and therefore what should I be doing? And I'll be able to more or less answer that pretty well on the spot, and that'll help you make your mind up. And even if you don't need that, I'd really like to be able to talk to you before you actually start the course, whether you start it next year or in spring next year or in autumn next year. Autumn's the one we start in February, because I'm keen to get everyone that we're a small cohort, and it's really nice having a small cohort because we can just work out what everyone's good at, and we're not churning people through here like cattle. We're the year cohorts are about maybe maximum 20. So, and it's a really rich environment because everyone's working together and working off each other and developing what they do. So I want to make sure that you see that personal side to how we can help your education. Any other questions? Oh, there's another one in there. Is it guaranteed to enter the Master of Landscape Architecture after finishing the diploma? Yes. So you just have to pass the diploma and you got an automatic entry. We wouldn't put you through the certificate and the diploma if you weren't going to go in and do the masters. And so anything that's a pass is, as long as you passed everything, we'll get you into the masters. But don't forget that, I don't want you just getting a pass. I want you getting an HD, all of you, because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to make you excellent in what you do, not just at university, but what you offer to the discipline and the profession and the broader, environment that we all live in or will have to live in the next 100 years. Where is the campus located? The campus is entirely in Sydney. It's at Central Station so it's near the main railway station in Sydney. And so it's very accessible. It's about a 5-minute walk from the main railway station. So, and all the trains end up at Central Station in Sydney. And you can probably look that up in Google Maps. But everything ends up there, and then you've got a 5-minute walk, and then we've got these amazing studios and so on. Lots of people just enjoy the proximity to all the activities, and obviously we make lots of our studios are based around the city, and then lots of them go into the country areas, and like I was showing you before. So we are very committed to how we live in cities and also how we live in the country, because the country is just as important as the city. Any more questions? Okay, well, that's 6:45. Are we okay, Arena, to wrap it up there?
Yes, if there are no more questions, I guess this is it.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say it was lovely to talk to you, but I didn't see any of you. But I hopefully will see some of you sometime soon. And as I say, please feel free to contact me through that chat line address. Oh, hang on, there is another question, I think. Asma's got another question. Is it possible to apply for a Master's in Architecture at UTS without having a bachelor's degree in architecture? No. In architecture are pretty strict about making sure you have a design degree before you enter the Masters. And they do that because of their accreditation requirements. So landscape architecture is different because we accept people can come from all sorts of different backgrounds, and we think that it makes landscape architecture better because landscape's broader and it's not as specific as architecture is. I hope that answers your question, Asma. So the answer is basically no, but if you was to change that Master's in Landscape Architecture without having a bachelor's degree in landscape architecture, then the answer is yes. So I hope that's clear. Okay. Maybe we wrap it up there, Arina. Oh, no, wait a minute. There's one more. As on the UTS website, it says a Bachelor of Architecture is required, not for landscape. Yes, it is for architecture. If you want to do a Master's in Architecture, then you need a Bachelor in Architecture, but not in landscape architecture. I hope that's clear, Asma. But if you want to just discuss with me a bit later, but I hope everyone else is clear what we offer and what's clear, what you need to do, or where you'd start to get into this. Okay, maybe we wrap there, Arena.
Yep.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. I'll see you, hopefully see you soon. Okay.